I'll just repeat the verse and then we can discuss this. तेनैक आत्मानम् अशेष देहिनां कालं प्रधानं पुरुषं परेशं स्वतेजसा ध्वस्त गुण प्रवाहम आत्मैक भावेन भजध्वम अत्था. And the next verse is 19. दयया सर्वभूतेषु संतुष्टया येन केन वा सर्वेन्द्रियोपशान्तया च तुष्यति आशु जनार्दन. Okay, so these two verses are talking about that a devotee, basically what is happening is what Srila Prabhupada is saying, that a devotee can cross the material modes of nature simply by doing pure devotional service. That's what Srila Prabhupada and these two verses are alluding to. Now, in this verse, in 18th verse, something is told about Krishna. Some information is given about God. And why that information is given? To inform us that that simply by serving Krishna we can get over modes of material nature. But the question is how? Why does service to Krishna take us beyond modes? Why does service to anybody else except Krishna doesn't actually bind us in the modes? Same service for Krishna, for others, for anybody else, but when it is done for Krishna, it liberates from modes or material nature, but when it's done for anybody else, it binds us. Now the obvious question is why? Because you see, these jnanis and yogis, and especially karmkandis, I mean to say all other philosophers and sects except Vaishnavas, they don't really accept this, that by serving God we can be free of material modes of material nature. They don't accept this theory. Mayavadis definitely will not accept this. They will say it's all bogus. According to Mayavadis and Jnanis, you need to read Vedas, you need to do tapasya, you need to, according to Karmkandis, you need to do some pious works to neutralize sinful activities. According to probably according to Jains and Nyaya and Vaisheshika philosophers, you need to actually mortify your body, mortification. You need to do a lot of intense austerities to the point of torturing this body and soul, and that's how you will get over all these sinful reactions. But for us, for devotees, we say, well, it's simple, just serve Krishna. That's all. Offer him prasadam, chant his names. That's all, and you will cross modes of material nature. It's a joke for jnanis and yogis. And we see that, you see this, that happened with Gopal Chapal and Haridas Thakur. And so basically that was a debate. So this, I think that was a house of this, what do we say? I think Raghunath Das Goswami, yeah. Raghunath Das Goswami's father, what was his name? I'm just forgetting. Majumdar, some two people, Govardhan Majumdar and one more. Yeah, right. Hiranya Majumdar, Govardhan Majumdar, yeah. So there, this Haridas Thakur, actually, Haridas Thakur used to visit their house because, so not because Hiranya Majumdar, Govardhan Majumdar, they were devotees, but because their Kul Guru, Yadunandana Acharya, he was a great devotee. And he was just living nearby their house because, I mean to say, even today if you go to Raghunath Das Goswami's village, the name of that village is Saptagram. So it's very easy to go. Next time you go to Mayapur, so when you catch a train from Havra, in between there is a station, Saptagram. That's all. Just get down there, catch a rickshaw and go to Raghunath Das Goswami's house. It's a very small village, so you can imagine, Yadunandanacharya just living nearby in the vicinity of that house, and these people are landlords. And Raghunath, especially when he was a boy, he was associating with Yadunandanacharya, and that's how he came to know about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So in that sense, one of the first devotees, first guru of Raghunath Das Goswami is Yadunandanacharya. Probably Shiksha Guru and Patpadaksha Guru. Because you see, ideally we think that Shiksha Guru of Raghunath Das Goswami is Sarup Damodar, and that's correct, because Mahaprabhu actually entrusted Raghunath Das Goswami to Sarup Damodar. But even before that, he was taking a lot of association of Yadunandanacharya and basically teachings from him. So they were also the Shiksha Guru. So Haridas Thakur used to come there to have his association. So there, I think they conducted some function, and Haridas Thakur was there. Yadunandanacharya invited Haridas Thakur. So Yadunandanacharya might have told Haridas Thakur, please come. There's a function. We'll have kirtans and all this, and you give some katha there. So he gave some katha, and there was this person Gopal Chapal. And he told, simply by taking names of Krishna you can be liberated. And Gopal Chapal got really mad. He said, I object to this. This is nonsense. I don't agree. This person, Haridas Thakur, is a cheat. How can you get liberation simply by saying Hare Krishna? Now, of course, we know that you have to take holy names purely, Shuddha Nam. But you can get liberation even by Namabhas. That's the beauty there. So, as far as liberation is concerned, Haridas Thakur said liberation you can get just by chanting Hare Krishna, and Gopal Chapal said, you fool. I mean to say, so there was a big argument, and then he said, you see, Jnanis, yogis are doing tapasya for so many millions or thousands or hundreds of years, whatever, in Kali Yuga, and then they are getting liberation, but here you are saying just by Hare Krishna people get liberation. I don't agree this. Haridas Thakur said, well, okay, fine. If this is not truth, then I will cut off my nose. But everybody was angry. They said, Gopal Chapal, you get lost. You have actually offended a great Paramahamsa Vaishnava and this and that. And then he went away. And finally, we know that Gopal Chapal had leprosy and his beautiful nose melted away because of offense. But anyway, the point I was coming to that was this Jnanis and Yogis will hardly believe that simply by serving Krishna or simply by doing devotion to Krishna you can cross material modes of nature. Eternal bondage can be broken. That's a big thing. You see, it's a very big thing. How do you really how do you understand this? That's the whole question there. Now, to answer that question, this verse is spoken. Text 18. Why does service to Krishna take us beyond modes of material nature? Although seemingly nothing is happening. I mean to say, so in the sense, apparently, what you are doing, you are simply saying Hare Krishna and maybe making some food and offering, doing some arti. Seemingly these appear as mundane actions, nothing more than that, or even some simplistic actions. There's nothing great, at least apparently, it doesn't appear so great in comparison to yogis who are sitting in a cave, closing their eyes, not moving, in a samadhi trance, and they have become simply like a bamboo, so thin hairs, and their back is stuck up on the walls of the cave because they have been meditating for probably 18 years. You can imagine, without eating and sleeping, that appears great, isn't it? And that's why, this Vivekanand, he went for a tour for South India, And he went to all these temples. Of course, if you go to South India, you can't miss going to Tirupati, Rameshwaram. These are big temples, Madurai. So he went to all these temples, and his conclusion was that these people are crazy people. These are nonsense people. They are hypocrites and corrupt. This devotion is nonsense. It's all eating and dancing, and that's what they are doing. Prasadam and dancing, and some waving of lamps. That's all. How can they advance spiritually by doing this? He could gather this. His small intelligence could, his mundane eyes could see this. That's all. He couldn't really digest. Arya Samaj, Dayanand Saraswati, founder, he also heavily criticized Vaishnavas, and he said, no, these people, they can never cross illusion. I mean to say, it's a dream for them. What they are doing without reading Vedas, how can they cross illusion? So, but that is answered here. No, my dear Vivekanand and Dayanand Saraswati, you are dead wrong. You couldn't see the truth. It happens. And how does it happen? Okay, now let's go into the verse. The question is now, how does devotion take us beyond modes of material nature? How does devotion get us liberated? That's the question. How does serving God, in spite of binding us in actions, liberates us from actions, in spite of the fact that serving God is all full of actions? That's the question there. So what does this verse say? Tenaika atmanam ashesha dehinam. Atmanam ashesha dehinam. It is said, this verse is saying, okay, fine, so question, okay, this is a question. So first we need to understand who is God. Before answering this question, how does service to God liberate you, you have to understand who is God. Now to discuss about God, there are so many things. I mean to say, you can spend a whole life discussing about God. Okay, but no. But in the context of this question, you need to know some essential points. You don't need to know everything. You just need to know some things. At least if you want to answer this question. The most important points. Let's put it like that. If you have to answer this question. Okay, so what are those points? The first point he's making is, Tenaikam atmanam ashesha dehinam. He's saying ekam. Ekam. God is one. Now this word ekam has many meanings in Sanskrit, by the way. Ekam is the word in Sanskrit which has bahu artham. It's one, but it has many meanings. It's quite contradictory, but it's like that. Ekam means one. Ekam means also because whatever is one, that is, ekam also means the first. One. Number one. He is number one in the queue. That means he's the first. So what this verse is saying, Krishna is the first living entity, Adi Purusha. In the sense of Adi. Original Purusha, Prabhupada says, isn't it? That's one of the meaning of Ekam. Ekam also means the only. Ekam. Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. Only. So what this verse is saying, that Krishna, or God, He is the only supreme living entity that has no comparison with Him. There's nobody equal to, there's nobody above than Him. He is the only, by only means the only unique supreme living entity who can do some things which living entities can never do. That's the meaning of Ekam. Ekam, He's unique. How He is unique? Living entities can do many things. If a living entity can, I mean to say, if they take yoga, you take to yoga and get siddhis, you can do miracles and wonders. But some things you can never do in spite of you becoming Maha yogi. Still you can't do. And what's that? There are, what's that? Divya Sargadi Shrishtam Brahma Rudra Adi Vivohanam Bhakta Prarabdha Vidvamsam Ityadi Achintya Shaktita. Rupa Goswami says in Nectar of Devotion, I think 1.2.149 something. That's the verse. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami says, and he says three things a living entity can never do. Even though a living entity shall become liberated, or Maha Yogi, or Paramahamsa, or Siddha, still he can't do these three things. There's a difference. And that's what makes Supreme Ekam, unique. And what are the three things? Divya Sarga Adi Shrishtam. That is creation, maintenance and destruction. No living entity can do. That's the first difference between God and us. If somebody asks you what's the difference between God and us, these three things you have to tell. The first thing is Divya Sargadi Srishtam. Nobody can create, destroy and maintain this material world. It's impossible. Even Vishwamitra could not do. You see, Vishwamitra wanted to become this Brahma Rishi. And this person Trishanku, he approached Vishwamitra and he said, I want to go to heaven with this body. And Vishwamitra said, okay, I will make you go. And by his powers, he made Trishanku ascend to the heaven. And Indra said, what nonsense, you can't come to heaven with this material body. You have to take heavenly body. I mean to say, after death, by your pious credits you go. You can't just go by derooting that process of law of karma, and by powers you come and to live here. That's nonsense. So Indra just kicked him down. He just kicked him, really kicked him. He kicked him on his head and he was just falling down, and Vishwamitra, he shouted, Vishwamitra, help me. Vishwamitra saw him, my God, he's falling down. By his powers he again pushed him up. And Indra saw he's coming up, he just kicked him, and then he's going up and down, up and down, up and he got mad. He said, I'll die. Like that. What are you doing, Vishwamitra? Vishwamitra said, okay, don't worry. I'll make a whole planet, a whole universe for you. Don't worry about that. A planet, probably. He made a whole planet for Trishanku. And it's still there, by the way, in south direction. So it is said, in the southern direction, there is a planet belonging to Trishanku. We don't know in modern astronomy what that corresponds to. Probably in Vedic astronomy, if we do research, we'll be able to tell which planet that corresponds to in the sky. But anyway, it's there. But what happened was Vishwamitra made that planet, but then that planet started falling down on the earth. And they were very afraid, and they said, Vishwamitra, what the hell, everybody will die. So Vishwamitra said, I can't do anything, it's out of my control. And then he prayed to Vishnu. Vishnu came and Vishnu said, Vishwamitra, okay, fine, this time I will help you. I'll stop this planet right in the middle of heaven and the earth, in the sky. Trishanku can live there. But next time you don't do what I'm supposed to do. Don't just meddle in my work. You do your work. This is your nonsense, useless Brahmrishi. You got so egoistic. This is my department. Why do you want to come in my department? So he couldn't handle. You see, that's the point I'm bringing. That he couldn't handle even one planet what he made. So creating the entire material universe and maintaining it and destroying it, that's the function of God. Of course, he does that through Lord Shiva, Brahma and Vishnu. Krishna does that, but he's doing. That's the idea. So that's the meaning of Ekam. So that is one unique thing. Ekam means one unique thing belonging to God. And the next point is what is unique in God is Brahma Rudradi Vimohanam. Even Brahma and Lord Shiva can be deluded by the Maya energy of God. Nobody can delude Brahma and Lord Shiva, no matter how much great Yogi and Siddha and Paramahamsa and Mukta Naam Api Siddha Naam, Mukta No matter how much you are transcendentalist, but you can't bewilder Lord Shiva and Brahma, isn't it? You can't, I mean to say, you will not even dare to do that. But Vishnu can. Krishna can. Krishna bewildered Brahma. You know all the pastimes of this, of this. You know that, isn't it? Of this cowherd boys and these cows and stealing by Brahma, and he got bewildered. Brahm Vimohan Leela. And then Lord Shiva, he also deluded by Mohini Avatar. It was interesting. Today we were discussing about that. Actually, one boy, one brahmachari, he asked me today, well, Lord Shiva was bewildered by Mohini Avatar, but Lord Shiva, he was attracted to Mohini, and Mohini is God. So what's so bad? That was a question. It was a good question, isn't it? I mean to say, if you say, okay, but Brahma was attracted towards Mohini, but then that's devotion, isn't it? You get attracted towards God. What's so wrong in that? But no, Bhagavatam says one thing very important. Vyasadeva had to include that point, which is very embarrassing for Lord Shiva. But that proves the point of this pastime. The point is that Vishnu, he deluded, actually he put Lord Shiva into Maya. It was not a spiritual attraction, it was a mundane attraction. And that's why we say he got bewildered. He actually got bewildered by the deluding energy of God. It was not something spiritual. And to prove that, Vyasadeva, Sukadeva Goswami or Vyasadeva, he included the point that when Lord Shiva was running after Mohini, his semen dropped. So that is very important point. In fact, that point of semen, that's the most important point in this pastime. You might not have thought this, but that's the point. Why? You know why? Because if that was a spiritual attraction, then there should be no semen falling down. It's not that Lord Shiva is in Samadhi and his semen is falling down always because of a spiritual attraction. That doesn't happen in spiritual attraction. So it's something mundane going on there. Although it might be something mixed, but definitely there is a mundane component. Otherwise, why semen is falling down? There's a mundane emotion happening there. And that's so Mohini told Lord Shiva that, see, you will be deluded by my material energy. And Lord Shiva was deluded. And the proof was his semen falling down. So his attraction was not under spiritual energy. Or let's say it was something mixed. It was not pure spiritual attraction. So Brahma, you see, Lord Vishnu by his Maya, God can do this. Nobody else can do this. That's another difference. And third difference between God and us, living entities, is Bhaktanam Prarabdha Vidhvamsam. That Bhaktanam is devotees. He can destroy the Prarabdha of his devotees. By Prarabdha means sinful reactions. Sinful reactions which he is suffering now. It's not the sinful reactions of past lives or something past, or those sinful reactions which are not yet fructified. Sinful reactions which he is suffering, which is already been fructified, prarabdha. He can destroy that. There is no process, jnana, yoga, even jnanis and yogis, they agree to this point that we can destroy all karmas, but prarabdha karmas, the karmas which you are suffering, that cannot be destroyed. That you have to suffer. No amount of siddhis, no amount of yoga, no amount of their paramahams and their liberation and whatever, their so-called liberation, it can destroy prarabdha karma. You have to actually undergo and suffer your prarabdha karmas, the karmas which you are suffering now. You have to taste it. There is no other way. But God can do that. Kubja. Kubja by Prarabdha. What was Kubja's Prarabdha karma? She was Kubja. Kubja means she was three-bended. She was bended in three places. Kubja. So what do we say in English? Kubja. What do we say? Hunchback woman. Yeah. She was a hunchback woman. Prabhupada said. Her spine was bent. So she was walking like old people, they are bent and they walk with a stick like that. She was. From the birth she was like that. There was a deformity in her spine. So but Krishna came to Mathura and Kubja saw Krishna Balaram saw Kubja, and Krishna Balaram asked Kubja, where are you going? She said, I am servant of Kamsa, I am taking these oils and these nice fragrant powders and Chandan, especially Chandan for Kamsa. So she was a prostitute. She was not a prostitute. She was the head of a brothel. That's interesting, isn't it? In Mathura there is a brothel. There was a brothel. Yes. She was a headmistress of a brothel. Quite interesting, isn't it? And Krishna asked her. I mean to say, people might have been quite surprised when they would see when Krishna Balaram was walking on the streets of Mathura. Everybody was seeing from their houses, from windows, because they were very attractive boys and new. I mean to say, they never visited Mathura. In previous days, now you don't experience this. If any tourist, as a tourist, if you travel anywhere, who cares for you? But in previous days, it was a big thing if any tourist come, because nobody used to come, because traveling was very infrequent because of lack of fast transportation. So people used to spend their whole life, almost their entire life, in one village. They didn't have to go anywhere. Prabhupada says that in his books, and that was good. But so Krishna Balaram, they went to Mathura for the first time, and people were seeing, my God, who are these boys? And they knew about Krishna Balaram first of all. So many of them were attracted, and moreover, who didn't know, they were attracted to the beauty, unprecedented beauty of Krishna and Balaram, and their activities. They were frolicking, they were laughing, and when they were walking on the streets of Mathura, they were doing a big drama out there, isn't it? And so everybody was seeing. And then suddenly Krishna Balaram stopped and they asked Kubja, these Chandan, can you give me this Chandan, beautiful lady? And people were saying, wow, what is this? This Krishna Balaram, they're talking to prostitute. They couldn't believe their ears. Who talks to a prostitute? And even now, even now people hesitate to talk to prostitutes. It's quite shameful. What is this, talking to prostitutes? So you can imagine 5,000 years back. You can't talk to a prostitute. You can't even see. People didn't even feel good to see them. If they saw a prostitute, they would just, say Vishnu, Vishnu, or go and take a bath, whatever. 5,000 years back. That was a strict Vedic society. So, he's saying to Kubja, can you give me this Chandan? So, he decided to give some mercy to Kubja, and he wanted to show through Kubja, he wanted to prove a point. That's the point, through Kubja. He wanted to prove 2 points. That his mercy is not limited to high class people and only to pious living beings. His mercy is available even to the most fallen section of society, a prostitute. At his door, everybody is invited. There is no distinction to anybody gaining that mercy. Anybody who does service to him, he will be awarded mercy. Whether it's a Brahman, whether it's a prostitute, whether it's a Brahmana's wives, uneducated, he will extend his mercy. If that living entity will do some service. You see the point now, the point of service is coming. Slowly it will come. So that's, so Kubja gave some Chandan, and then what Krishna said, Krishna did, he just put his 2 fingers on his chin, and his left foot on the left foot of Kubja, he put that and he just raised it, and she becomes straight. Everything gone. Her prarabdha is destroyed. Her karmas which she was suffering in this life, it's finished. She became a very beautiful lady. Very beautiful. People could hardly believe their eyes. Such a beautiful woman. And that's only God can do. So these are the three unique things. That's the ekam in this word. Ekam, the meaning of ekam here. That's why he's saying, Tvatena ekam. God is unique. The whole point to prove is, he is unique. No living entity is like him. So that is why when you do service to any other living entity and service to him, there is a difference because he is unique. He can do what nobody else can do. That is why service to any other living entity doesn't make you cross modes of material nature, or doesn't avoid your liberation, permanent liberation. But service to Krishna can take you beyond modes of nature, can give you liberation, and even much beyond that, it can give you love of God. Because he's unique, he can do those things which nobody else can do. That's one of the reasons which is in this ekam. And then he says, okay, then then the point is, okay, fine, he's unique, that's okay. So the question here is, if he's unique, then somebody can ask, okay, God is unique and there's no living entity like God. So then if he's so unique, then he would definitely not be mingling with living entities, isn't it? A king is very high and so unique, and one and only one king, and he doesn't always daily goes to people's house and chit chat with them and speak with them, and he doesn't mix with common man, isn't it? A king, he doesn't mix because he's unique. So somebody can say, okay, God is so unique, so definitely he might not be mixing with living entities, and he has he would not stay with living entities, isn't it? He would be in his kingdom, up there, and living beings are here, and he's controlling from there. That we can understand. So that's what is happening. Christianity is like that, isn't it? God is up and away in the heaven on the clouds with a big beard, and he's looking down, and the living entities, they are rotting in this material world, and they're suffering, and they're cursing God. Why did you make evil if you're so merciful? And God is saying, no, actually I'm merciful, you know, I'm not evil. And each of them is trying to convince each other. That's Christianity, by the way. Anyway, I'm joking. Christianity is... There is a lot of good essence in Christianity also. I'm joking, that's all. But the whole point, the theological implications of the theological understanding of God in Christianity, in Islam, in Judaism is that God is up there in the heaven, in the Noor, in Jannat, Allah, and here we are living beings, and He's controlling from there. That much. But because He's unique, that's the whole idea. Why He's up there and why He's not down here? Because He's unique, you fool. That's what they will say. He's very unique. He's so great, so great, so great. He will not come here in this stinking drain. He controls from there. That's enough. He is so merciful. At least He's controlling and He's managing us. That's a very big thing. And that's all. Just shut up. That's Christianity, Islam. But no, we don't say like that. Bhagavad doesn't say. Bhagavatam says, Ekam, He's unique. At the same time, Atmanam Ashesha Dehinam. He Ashesha, unlimited. Dehinam, living entities. Atmanam, super soul. He is a super soul of unlimited living entities. You can imagine. He stays with us in our heart. He's staying in our heart. My heart is here. Yeah. In this, it's looking reverse. I thought, my God, my heart is on the left. What happened to me? Anyway, here, yeah, my heart is here. So, my heart, yeah, my heart, yeah. So I am here. Yeah, I am here. Although I feel I am everywhere, but actually my soul is here. But my soul means I am here. And with me, there's super soul. That's how it goes. Soul and super soul. So super soul is there, accompanying living entity since eternity into different forms which he is forced to take by laws of karmas. Different species is traveling, and super soul is traveling with him, just like a friend. Upadrishta anumantascha suhirdam sarvabhutanam hridayesha arjuna tisthati. There are so many verses in Gita. He is there like a friend, and he is guiding living entity, inspiring him and helping him to fulfill his desires and acting. That is Krishna. He's so unique, but at the same time, he doesn't stay in this spiritual kingdom aloof from us. In spite of being so unique, he descends as super soul and stays with us as a friend and helps us at every moment. This body we are moving, we are not moving by our own energy. It's energy given by super soul. That's how we are able to move our hands and this. That's why when you get paralysis, even if you want to move your hand, you will not be able to move your hand. There's something wrong in your brain. And what's so wrong in the brain? The idea is a super soul is not giving you energy to actually move your hand, so you can't move. So we are dependent on God for each and every action, and that's what super soul is. So you see the point there. In spite of being unique, he's so friendly, and he comes down and stays with living entities and actually mixes with them, and he is there with all of us. So that's the idea there. Tena ekam atmanam ashesha dehinam. So that's what makes God unique. His uniqueness is not that he's staying in spiritual world and nobody is equal to him. That doesn't make anybody unique. That makes a person tyrant. He's there in the spiritual world. He doesn't mix with anybody, and he doesn't care. He cares, but he doesn't mix with anybody. So that makes a person not just tyrant, but it actually makes a person not so humble in the sense. So, but God, in spite of being so unique, he comes and stays with living entities in the heart as super soul. This is what makes him unique. It is said in scriptures, if a very great person, he associates with people lower than him, that makes him unique. Because that exhibits his compassion, his extreme compassion. It is said in scriptures, if a person is having all great qualities, but is devoid of compassion, all his great qualities are nullified. Because then he's egoistic. That's all. Isn't it? If a great person doesn't mix with anybody, people will say, he's great, he's nice, he's having so good, but he's egoistic and nobody likes him. So that's what it says. Ekam atmanam ashesha dehinam. That's God. And then two other important points about God they are telling. Kalam pradhanam, first, purusham paresham. Now he controls everybody. That's very important to understand when we want to answer this question. How does service to him liberates us? How does serving him liberates us? How does service to any other living entity doesn't liberate us? What's so unique in him? Now this is, he controls everybody. He's controlling, he's a controller. If he's a controller, then he can liberate us. He bound us, and now he can liberate us. It is up to him. That's the whole point there. How does serving him liberates us? Because it is his department. You can't go to a medical department and get your loans paid off. You can't do that, because if you want to get your loans paid off, then you have to go to a finance department, not medical department. So that's the department of him, and that's what Krishna says in Gita. Devi Aisha Gunamayi Mama Maya Duratya Maya Meva Prapadyante Maya Metam Taranti. So I actually liberate people, because that's my department. Maya is under me. So but he controls everybody. How does he control everybody? This is very interesting. It is at Kalam Pradhanam. By two ways he controls us, everybody. Kalam Pradhanam. Kalam Pradhanam means Kalam means time. Pradhanam means the most important factor. Pradhan here means most important factor. Prabhupada translates as material cause. This is the material cause. The cause in this material world of controlling people, Krishna controls in form of time. Kalam Pradhanam. This is very interesting information in Bhagavatam as far as science goes, because science says nothing is in control, but if you see Bhagavatam is saying time is in control. Now this is a very good information as far as science goes, because everything is controlled by time. Because if time stops, everything stops. Movement stops, forces stops, everything stops. So then where is science? What do you do with this universe? So time is controlling. If time is moving slow, things are moving slow. If time is moving fast, things are moving fast. You see how time is controlling things? In fact, so this is just by the way footnotes. If you know about something about black holes, there is a theory of black holes. You don't need to know everything, I'm just telling you. Black holes are there, something in the sky. Stephen Hawking said, in 2000, he said, there are black holes, even before that. And the point of black holes was, so black holes are some holes in universe, and they appear black. But the point here I'm trying to bring is, on the circumference of black hole, scientists were saying that the time stops. Just on the circumference of black hole, time stops. Stephen Hawking said, but in 2012, Stephen Hawking said, well, I want to change my idea. Time doesn't stop on the circumference of black holes. Because if time stops, then nothing should happen. But according to other scientists and even Stephen Hawking, on the circumference of black hole, there is much action going on. There are radiations and there are virtual particles and this and that and that. He says if time stops, then all other theories crashes. So time doesn't stop. So you see the point there. The point I am bringing is that scientists have to accept that time is under control. You see, even in biology, one cell, sperm and ovum they mix, and there is genes in the cell, and some cells become hands, some cells becomes legs, some cell becomes heart. At particular time on months, the first month hands, small hands are made. Second month some legs are made. Sixth month heart is made and it starts beating. So I'm just taking some random numbers here. But then who decides at what time what organ should be made? Time decides. So time is under control. That is Kalam Pradhanam. Krishna in form of time, he controls everything. And Purusham Paresham. And Krishna in form of, Prabhupada says, in his direct form, direct from spiritual world and super soul, he controls directly from there. In the form of time, he controls in the material world, and also he controls directly in form of super soul in the heart. Both ways he's controlling. Material cause, spiritual cause. Immediate cause, secondary cause, primary cause. Time is a secondary cause. Primary cause is God. So he is under full control. That's how he controls this whole universe. And then the point made here is Swatejasa Dhvasta Guna Pravaham. That's the point. Swatejasa. By his tej. Tej means spiritual energy. There are two words in Ayurveda, tej and oj. Ojas and tejas in a body. So tejas is the heat and the energy in our body, and ojas is, let's say, how do we put it? Ojas is how do I say? I don't know. It's a very technical word, but anyway, tej and oj. Tej in Sanskrit is a very technical word. When it is said Swatejasa, it is said God by his own energy. Teja means energy. By his effulgence, Tej means effulgence. The effulgence of sun is the energy of sun. Am I right? So by his energy, spiritual energy, Dhvasta Guna Prabhaham, he can destroy all the karmas, right up to Prarabdha karmas. He can destroy everything. That's the point they are trying to make. How he can destroy? I just told. The verse is telling. Why? Because he's unique. And he is in control. That's why he's able to destroy all karmas, and he's able to liberate you and take you beyond modes without any extraneous effort. And he can do that. And that is why Atmaika Bhavena Bhasadvamadaha, by serving him, by simple actions of service, simply by offering, chanting, simply by offering by hand, simply by moving your lips, you can get liberated. It's a nightmare for Jnanis and Yogis. If you tell any Jnani and Yogi, you can simply get liberated just by doing some offering, ringing a bell in the temple and chanting, they will never believe this. Most of you might not have met a Jnani and Yogi, real Jnani and Yogi. But they will never believe this. They will just laugh at you. They will say, you're a kid. But that's the whole point. Here, in the process of bhakti, we are not depending on our effort. We are depending on the mercy of God. That's the difference there. Why Jnanis and Yogis cannot accept, why Gopal Chapal could not accept the proposal of Haridas Thakur that one's chanting can liberate you? Because the whole process of Jnana and Yoga depends on personal effort. And when it comes to personal effort to get liberated, then that seems a very big task. It's almost like an ant trying to reach to the top of Mount Everest. It's impossible, but so you need some extraordinary efforts and blah blah blah. But here in bhakti process is Atmaika Bhavena. Bhakti process is everything about bhava. Everything about bhava, emotions and mercy. That's bhakti process. So in bhakti process, ant doesn't have to climb Mount Everest. Ant has to just cry out, and then God will come and take the ant and take it in his hand and put it on the top of the Mount Everest. That's all. That's how it goes. So then that is why in bhakti process, simple actions and simple feelings can actually liberate you. But if they are directed Atmaika Bhavena, directed only towards God, that's the trick there. That's the trick. Mercy of God can lift you up, but you have to completely focus on that. That's all. And then it can happen. Then it will happen. Atmaika Bhavena Bhajadvamadha. And that is why it is recommending, this verse is recommending that therefore you should engage in his devotional service, and that is what will help you to get liberated. Otherwise there is no other route to get liberation or going beyond modes. People who think Vimukta manena. Jnanis and yogis, they think they have got liberated, but actually they have not. They just think. But devotees can get real liberation and can go even beyond liberation. They can love of God. So that is why here Sukadeva Goswami is recommending, just do devotional service. Atmaik eko bhavena. One pointed attention. Don't divert your attention on jnana and yoga and other processes, because that will not help you. Those processes are different. Our process is different. And don't try to mix both of them. You see, some devotees, they also like to do meditation, or maybe like jnanis and tapasvis, they like to do tapasya, or maybe read Vedas, mix with that. But that's not required on this path. The only thing required is bhavena, bhava. That is the only thing required here. All Vaishnavacharyas, Vallabhacharya, Gaudiya Vaishnava, Madhva, Ramanuja, everybody is saying, in bhakti, our vehicle, the vehicle of bhakti is not Vedas, is not tapa, is not dana, it is bhava. We are on the ship named bhava. That's the ship you have to board. Don't board on the wrong ship, otherwise you'll end up somewhere else, or that ship will crash in the ocean. It's not a safe boat. So that's what is saying, Atmaika Bhavena. This Bhavena word comes in Bhagavatam right in the beginning. Bhuvi Bhavuka. What's that verse? Bhuvi Bhavuka. Anyway, so that in the first three verses, Pevatam Bhagavatam Rasamalayam. How is that? Yeah, Muhuraho Rasika. Yeah. Muhuraho Rasika Bhuvi Bhavuka. Muhuraho Rasika Bhuvi Bhavuka. So what was the meaning of Bhavuk? Pibatam Bhagavatam. That Bhavuk word, if you want to literally translate it as sentimental. Bhavuk. But that's not the point here. The whole point is, a connection to God is through sentiments. Not sentimental. You don't have to become mental. You have to have some sentiments. Real, genuine sentiments. What is genuine sentiment? A sentiment based on service of God. And what is emotions, mundane emotions? A sentiment. What is sentimental? Some sentiments based on your mind, conjured by your mind. But this bhavuka, the sentiments based on service of God, and that's what he's saying. Bhajadum adha, and the word is used adha. Worship him directly. Worship him directly. Adha means directly, actually. Anvadha means indirectly. When he says adha, worship him directly. Directly means what? Worship him directly means what? He says, don't divert your mind on any other process, on any other form of God even. Worship directly the original form of God, Krishna. That's all. Ete chamsa kalkala pumsa krishnastu bhagwan swayam. That's all. Just gayanti, rinanti, shinvanti, sing about him, think about him, talk about him. That's a process. It's actually simple. But that's the whole point. Prabhupada says we are complex. That's the whole point there. And that's what Sukadeva Goswami is saying. And that's the whole point. How this simple process is giving such a great result. That's the whole point there of this verse. That is very important question, by the way, very philosophical question. Ramanuja raises this question, Vallabh raises this question, how such a simple process is giving you such a great result? That's a big question. And the answer to this is due to the presence of God in this process. Due to the participation of God in this process. It's not we alone are trying to do something. That's the whole point here. Due to, actually, so Ramanujacharya makes a point. What makes bhakti so high? Then at the end of the process, because God is present in the process as a means. That's the whole idea there. The idea is the service which you are doing, you are coming in contact with God. Deities, God. Holy name, God. Devotees, they are also manifestations of God. They are Swarup of God, we understand. Tulsi Maharani, God. Srimad Bhagavatam, God. So Vrindavan, God. So what do you do with that? So what makes this process very important and very unique, that can give such a great result? God Himself. He's present in the process. And in the end of the process, jnana and yoga and karma kanda and all these process, God is not there. He comes in the end, if at all He comes. But as a means, He is not there. That is the point which Ramanuja makes. Here, sadhan is God and sadhya is God. A means is God and the goal is God. We are trying to approach God through the help of God. And that's what Vallabh also makes a point. It's the same point he makes. We also have this point. And that's the answer to this question. Why service to God gets us liberated? Because when we do service to God, we come in contact with Him. He's present in the service. And that's what Bhagavad Gita says. What's that verse? Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavi, Brahmagnau, Brahmanahutam, Brahmaiva tena gantavyam, Brahma karma samadhina. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, I am everything. I am service. The service you are doing, that I am that. The offering which you are making in service, I am that. The person you are offering, that of course I am. Brahmaiva tena gantavyam, I am. Brahma karma samadhina, and the bliss you are getting in devotion, that is also I. That also is I am. You see, beautiful verse. And that's why this process can liberate us without much extraneous effort in comparison to yogis and jnanis and karmakandis, ritualistic people like that. So anyway, I'll just end up here.